All right, everybody says we're live, so I'm going to believe it until somebody tells me otherwise. Please, if you're out there, let me know if you can hear the audio or if the video is okay. So I'm not just sitting here talking to myself or talking to nobody. Hey, everybody, my name is Michael Bunker. This is the Bunker Nation Show. I'm going to be your host for the evening. I'm glad you all could be here. Welcome, everybody, near and far. Those of you who are here live and those of you who are likely to be future people. Future people are the people that are going to watch this when it's not live sometime in the future. But welcome to you too, because it's just like it was live almost. Hello, Fran. Hello, Daniel. Good to see you guys. Come on in. Everybody push into the room. Don't worry about social distancing. Get in here. Come on into the comments section wherever you are. If you're on Facebook 1, 2, and 3, or if you're on YouTube, you're on Periscope, you're on Twitch, wherever you are. Come into the comment section, type in where you are, say hello. All right, audio video is okay. I guess Mr. Cash means Johnny Cash because I happen to be wearing black right now, which is not really true. This is gray, a lot of white. Hello, have a good to see you guys. Hey, everybody, come on in. Say hi. We got some stuff we might want to talk about. I don't know. It's totally up to you. We can always talk about whatever you want to talk about, but I got to do this box thing, and after that, we'll come back and we'll see what you do want to talk about. All right, we're back. Make sure you hit the like button wherever you are, especially those people who are on the YouTubes. If you would hit the like button, make a comment after the show is over, that would be great. Hope everybody's doing okay. I'm here on day 8, I think, of our COVID special, the COVID challenge. And everybody's doing great in my household. I'm doing great. I did finally lose my sense of smell. Very disappointed about that. I thought I was going to eke it out. Everybody else in my household had lost their sense of smell. I thought I was going to be the one that I was going to make it. I woke up this morning and I couldn't smell anything. My coffee didn't taste that good. And so I was trying to smell it, what it smelled like, and I couldn't smell it. So I went over there to the sink and we had some shampoo and some soaps and some lemony stuff, some smelly stuff that the girls like. Couldn't smell it. So I guess that's where we are. I hear that it can last 6 to 8 weeks, but I'm going to try 6 to 8 months. I'm going to try, I don't know, maybe some diet stuff. Maybe there's something that can be done about it. It's really disappointing to me because a big portion of my enjoyment of food is in the sense of smell. So there's that. But other than that, we're all doing really well. No fevers. Everybody's getting around great. We've been getting a lot of rest. I'm very excited, guardedly excited that hopefully in the next couple of days we're going to be kind of through this and starting to somewhat get back to normal, except for the dry cough on occasion. I still have seasonal allergies, which are continuous, and you'll see some of that. But other than that, everything's going great. None of us are really sick, and we're just kind of anxious to get back to life. But it has been an adventure, and I'm glad I could share it with all of you without sharing it with all of you. All right, so if you guys are out there, I'm going to be asking you for comments and questions and whatever you want to talk about. Topics, type them into the comments section. Hello, Pat. Good to see you. If I didn't already say hello. I'm glad everybody could be here today. There's a lot of things going on. I've been doing a lot of reading. I finished the novel that I was reading. Hello, Ethan. Good to see you. I was reading this novel. I've held it up a couple of times, 1929 by Frederick Turner. I really, really enjoyed it. I was sorry to see it go. I actually stopped reading with about 5 pages left to go because I didn't want it to finish, and then I ended up finishing it. So then I started a couple of other things. I don't know. One thing I'm reading again. I know a lot of times people are asking me about, hey, how does this compare with the Russian Revolution? I held up a book a couple of days ago about the revolution of 1905 in Russia. And then I found this one yesterday. Let me tell you this. I got very disappointed because I went to Amazon as an author. I went to Amazon after I finished the book, and I was like, hey, I like historical novels, even fiction historical novels that take place there during a historical epic. Particularly, I really like the 20s and 30s, even up into the 40s and 50s. Anywhere in the world. It's just a time period I like to study and read about. And having just finished this book that took place in the 20s, I thought, I'd like to go find another historical literary fiction novel, and just couldn't find anything. And the reason why is because the algorithm at Amazon is obviously skewed, and it's not based on my preferences, because every single book that comes up is some type of historical revisionist, SJW, intersectional, female authored book that basically completely turns over like the real history of the world into some type of anti-patriarchal rant or something. And people can have whatever books they want. I'm fine with that. But why is this the only books that are available? Why are there no books by male authors even available, even being suggested to me? Which I find odd, because it cannot be based on my personal preferences or things I've bought in the past or anything like that. Maybe it's that genre. Maybe that genre of literary fiction has been completely taken over by women. I don't know. But if I want a book about the 20s, I know enough about it to know what that time period was like. But every single book has some political agenda. There's something in it that is the intersectional thing that they're getting to, and they're all the same authors. And so I just was very, very disappointed. So I said, you know what? I got 3,000 books in my library. I got a whole room over here I never even go into. So I decided to go in there, and I was looking around, and I found a couple to show y'all, and I actually started reading one again that I already read. This is a book by John Reed, 10 Days That Shook the World. John Reed was a Marxist American reporter. If you ever saw the movie Reds in the 1980s, it was about John Reed. He died in 1920 in Moscow, and they buried him like next to the Kremlin wall. He's like the only American buried next to the Kremlin wall. But just because he's a Marxist doesn't mean that the book isn't informational, because it is. He was, pardon me, he was actually there during the revolution in 1917, and he wrote kind of a firsthand account of the Russian Revolution. It starts off with about 2 chapters that are very difficult to get through, where it goes through all the different parties, all the different personages, different trade unions, who was who, and all this kind of stuff. But one of the interesting things about this book, Marxists in general, but all socialists, like to think that they're the representative of the masses, just as John did. In fact, they portray themselves as the representative of the workers, right? They never are. So I don't know. I hope I'm back. Frozen there. All right. Looks like we had a glitch. Those things happen. I don't know if it's real or what, but it looks like we're back. Somebody give me a clue when you see that I'm back. Type in there, let me know. And then we'll get back into it. All right, we're back. Thank you. Good to see you, War Dog Hine. Good to see you, Sheila. All right, we're back. And so, as I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted, the socialists always like to portray themselves as the representatives of the working man. And you really get that coming from John Reed. In his first couple of chapters, he goes to like some extreme lengths to make sure that people know that the Russian peasants weren't ignorant, unread, uneducated, illiterate people. They, for the most part, they were. When they talk about the workers, they're never talking about, in Russia in particular, the 135 million rural workers who don't go to towns, who didn't go to cities, who never went to Moscow, who never went to Petrograd. They're always talking about the factory workers in the big cities. Those were how they basically mobilized political power, through soldiers and these industrial factory workers. And so one thing that John likes to point out is how representative of the workers the Bolsheviks were. If you go and look up the Bolsheviks, so they weren't representative of the workers at all. They were all very rich, very spoiled, Western educated socialists who thought they knew better than everybody else, just like John Reed. John Reed went to Harvard, just like all the other Neiman Marxists who are marching around today. They're all college-educated idiots who think they know what's best for everybody else, and they speak as if they represent somebody. They don't represent anybody that you know. They certainly don't represent. But what happened in Russia in particular was that there were machinations by the really powerful for different reasons that kind of conglomerated into an opportunity for a tiny, tiny, tiny sect, the Bolsheviks, to take power. And they were brutal when they took power. And they eliminated most of the people who were their supporters and who got them to where they are. And so that's usually what you can expect. But I think this is a fascinating book. You definitely want to see it from their point of view as much as you can. And it does give you an idea of the day-to-day workings of the revolution. He goes into a little bit into the history since 1905, etc. There's another book around here, I don't know where it is, that's actually a biography of John Reed. And so the introduction of this book, 10 Days That Shook the World, was written by a guy named Glanville Hicks. And Glanville Hicks, when he knew John Reed, was a communist, was a Marxist. And of course, he lived long enough to see what happened in the Soviet Union. And Glanville Hicks became an anti-Marxist. And by 1956, the experiment in communism in Russia was basically over. It was just a totalitarian dictatorship of very few elites. And that was pretty much the end of it. It was just all over, but you know, the hundreds of millions of deaths and everything else that would come because their system can't produce anything. All right, so Hava says, what are your thoughts on A Brave New World? I borrowed it today and just skimmed. Looks a bit deep. It's deep and dark. It is. I think everybody should read it. It's certainly should be, I don't want to say mandatory. It should be required reading for most people. We used to have to read it in high school, that in 1984. Definitely worth the read. Pardon me. The problem with a lot of those books is that, depending on what side they're on, they often portray what we have become used to in this society as almost a sci-fi view. So a dystopian world anymore doesn't move the needle on anybody. We've all seen enough movies that we can dismiss fiction and we can dismiss it as something that's not realistic enough for us to be able to get our minds around. And that leads us to the main problem. And just like in Russia, in America, the average worker, I want to use that term because I want to spin it around here in a minute, is ignorant, is illiterate, has not read much, doesn't know much about world history, couldn't tell you who fought in World War I and World War II, doesn't know who the vice president just was. They're profoundly ignorant. And so when somebody comes along and they're selling them a bill of goods, like John Reed was, a Marxism, sometimes it can sound pretty good. And so when you have machinations that are going on, for example, in Russia, socialists who had, after the 1905 revolution, had forced the Tsar to accept Soviets and all this these organizations that were supposed to be political power, democratic political power. They weren't. Those people who were in those positions of power pulled off things because they wanted insurrection. They wanted trouble. They were gaining power by it. And so one of the things they did is they wanted Russia out of the war. Russia, as you know, was involved in World War I on the side of the Allies and was fighting Germany, and they wanted Russia out of the war. So they manufactured losses. They made sure the soldiers were unhappy. They made sure the soldiers on the front didn't have materials, didn't have guns, didn't have bullets. They manufactured losses because they thought if the losses were bad enough and they were humiliating enough, the people would demand that the war be over. And they did. And it became a good recruiting ground for the Bolsheviks amongst the soldiers and the leaders of the soldiers and the trade unions and all this kind of stuff. You got to remember, nothing of this has anything to do with average people. Average people, and I mean average in a statistic way, in Russia in 1917 did not live in Moscow. They didn't live in the big cities. They lived in the countryside. Most of them had never even been to a factory and didn't even know what they did there, never ever once used a factory good. And yet those were the people that were supposed to be represented as workers, the workers' revolution. And that's generally what's happening today, is that a highly educated bunch of idiots who have never done any work in their life, who don't understand the workaday world in America, where most people, at least half, don't live in big cities with parents that pay their bills while they live in the basement and play Fortnite and talk insurrection with their buddies. And so what happens is you get this disconnect between these revolutionaries and there's a hatred for the average man. They always acted like they were speaking it, but they didn't mind if 30 million Ukrainians died when they came to power. They preached democracy, and as soon as they got into power, they folded all the local Dumas, and they completely eradicated a lot of the councils that were supposed to be democratic. After that, votes didn't count. Stalin said it himself. So democracy is only a means of bringing in that type of totalitarianism. It's not a means of maintaining any type of system. But here's the biggest problem. Because I have a lot of people, they ask me, why am I so avid and anti-Marxist, anti-socialist? And the reason why is because I'm a Christian. And I actually know what that means. I actually know what the Bible says about these things. And socialism is founded on two great ideas, and that is theft and covetousness. That's the foundational building blocks of socialism. So when they tell you it's not Marxism, it's democratic socialism, doesn't matter. It's based on stealing and wanting stuff that doesn't belong to me. That's the foundation of it. Is it true that the big corporations and the banks have been stealing us blind for years? Absolutely. But then you have to ask yourself, why are those people supporting the socialists? Why are the big tech companies censoring people that are against socialism? Why are they paying money to ship socialists all over the country to riot and loot? All of the major corporations that you know support the socialists, however tiny a group it is. So you have to ask yourself, why do these individuals who pretend to be socialist revolutionaries, they're in the bag with the biggest corporation, the biggest banks, the politicians, all of them are all in it together because they don't care about you. They don't care about the average person out there who's just trying to get by, whose parents never gave them anything. My parents gave me an education. And by that, I mean they actually taught me how to read, and they taught me how to study and how to find out things I want to know. But after that, you know, you have to get out into the world, you have to work. And that's the problem, is that you have a lot of people who have never done that. And listen, this is going to hurt a little bit. I'm talking about most of you. We have a system that allows people, because of the conglomeration of 1,000 years of civilization, has created a system where people never really have to work. They're trained from a young age how to do the thing that's necessary for you to take the next step. You do that thing, and then you go to high school, and then you do that thing, and you do all the right things, and then you go to college. Everybody goes to college, and they don't teach you anything there. You may get some specialty, but probably not. Then you go and you get a job, and you peck at a dot, and they give you money for it. That is not production. That's not producing the food that your family needs to survive. That's not working in such a way that if you didn't do it, you would starve. And most people don't know what it would take to survive if there wasn't a system in place, a giant superstructure built around them that holds them up. A matrix that allows people to be so specialized in one tiny little area that they can do one thing and maybe do it really well and get paid enough that they can have all of these carnal comforts. And so what's happened in the world is we are now many generations away from any generation that had to survive, that had to actually work from the soil to survive. And so this goes back, we're talking about early 1900s, but it goes back even farther than that. There's a real strange occurrence that happened in America from about early 1700s through about the 1850s. A confluence of events created a group of people in which almost every member of the society was middle class and would be considered wealthy today. Anybody that wanted to, for the most part, and I understand that there are racial issues we're not talking about right now, almost anybody that wanted to could have land, could work that land, and could produce for their family. And many people sold themselves into slavery by the means of going to work for somebody for 7 years and signing a contract of indentured servitude so that they could get the tools of a trade. They could end up buying land. They could start a business. And in the strangest abnormal blip in the history of the world, a large nation came to be in which almost everybody in it was wealthy, comparatively wealthy. It's a strange thing. And to look back that on the yeoman farmers and agrarian and early mercantilism, and to see where most people owned land, most people were able to produce most of what they needed, and they only bought or traded as a means of making things more simple. Most people didn't want to produce every single thing. And so if you found somebody that was good at something, maybe they made some marmalade that you liked, then you might barter eggs for marmalade or whatever it is, which brought up the rise of stores and et cetera. But it's an interesting thing. That started to die away with the rise of the federal banking and the banking institutions and the re-enslaving of the populace, the desire by the industrialists to move most of the population, either kill them in wars or move them into the big cities to become functionaries in factories. This is why you see the rise of Marxism and communism, even in the United States in the early part of the 20th century. All right, so here we are now. And this seems like a bleak monologue, but it's very difficult for me to see how this is going to change. People ask me all the time, what would you do to stop it? Well, this thing could be stopped in a matter of weeks or months. And that is the people that produce the food would have to stop. Now, some of you have read Atlas Shrugged. I read it when I was in college, like a lot of people, and I got enamored with it for about 5 minutes. There are some serious problems with the book, and there's also some serious benefits to reading it. One of the themes of Atlas Shrugged is that the main character, silent, invisible character, John Galt, is going around and convincing the men of the mind, major industrialists, to go on strike against the world. Because the theory is that if the industrialists went on strike, the world would starve, and they would all beg for the industrialists to come back, and then you could have a system where you could get rid of all the socialists and Marxists and all this stuff. It's based on some flawed premises. The main one is its unobjective view of Christianity and the history of the world. But its second biggest flaw is that the world that existed for thousands of years without the Industrial Revolution, what it can't exist without is people producing food. That's what it cannot exist with. So if there was a real John Galt, the real John Galt would be out there convincing the people who supply materials and supplies to large farms and the smaller family farms to go on strike. The truck drivers and the tractor drivers and the tractor manufacturers and all that kind of stuff, mostly of like mind, would just have to stop. Would it be horrible? Probably. It was horrible in Atlas Shrugged, but it would work. Other than that, you can't get people to do anything. Let me give you an example, because I really about pissing people off apparently today. You hear people start going on and on about, well, if it wasn't for all the socialists and the Marxist professors and the colleges and the university and the high schools teaching them, so pull your kids out of there. This is where I get into trouble. Because the answer to that is I can't. We get into a long list of stuff people can't do. And the reason they can't do it is because they are ingrained in a system, a superstructure that has enslaved them, and they don't even know they're slaves. And so my conversation with people goes like this: why do you send your children to institutions led and completely taught by Marxists and socialists to educate them, when you know those people are enemies of God? They're enemies of everything that you believe. And they'll say, well, I can't do it. Me and my wife, we have to work. Okay, why? This actually happened on Facebook. I got blocked by a whole Facebook group. Why do you say you have to work? Well, to have money. All right, so it's an economic decision. You made an economic decision that your own personal comfort was more important than pulling your children out of an ideological training school of Marxists and socialists. Boom! Into that, you're blocked forever. Never going to listen to you again, because it's true. We all make economic decisions. My point was, there are some of us who chose to be poor on purpose so that we would not have to send our children to somebody else to be educated, because we knew what that would lead to. And then people will hem and haw, and they'll, well, we send ours to a Christian university and all this kind of stuff. And yet, overall, the educational level of the American college student is now on par with about an 8th grade education in 1776. There were so few farmers now that the Great Depression happened again, just about everyone would starve. That's probably true. The biggest problem is that most of the food is raised on big factory farms in unsustainable ways. However, and they will tell you automatically, and everybody who pushes big big farming will tell you that you cannot produce enough food on small family farms to feed everyone. First of all, it's not true. Second of all, it's not our obligation to feed everybody. We're supposed to feed ourselves. And so the question is, can I produce enough food on 5 acres to feed 10,000 people? No, it's not my obligation to feed 10,000 people. My obligation is to feed my family. If people took responsibility for their families, and there will be people who can take a half an acre and can produce 80 to 120,000 pounds of food in a single year. It's all over YouTube. Just go look at it. There are people that are more productive who are going to produce way more than they can eat, and that food will become locally available, and places that thrive and that encourage this type of behavior are going to do well. So there's a propaganda war that basically tells us that everybody's going to die if we don't keep going. If we don't keep going, if the wheel doesn't keep going forward, everybody's going to die. And so nobody's willing, even on the smallest level, to pull out. Like I said about education, you make a financial decision to turn your children over to your enemies, and you know that's what you're doing. And then you afterwards you rationalize and you justify it, and you get angry at anybody who points that out. And it's not simple. It's not easy. It's not easy for me to say, because you got land, you got a farm. No, I didn't have one. I didn't. When we did this, we had nothing. We started off out here living in a tent. The problem is we don't want to do anything that's hard. I got to get back to my point, because I'm not trying to get into farming. I'm not trying to get into how you stop all this. The problem is we individually don't want to do anything that's hard. And the hardest thing in the world is the thing we have to do, which is to say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to continue to feed into that. And that's what nobody wants to hear. So what happened in Russia is you actually had 150 million people, but only about 20 or 30 million of them were in the industrialized cities and were being controlled by these trade unions and these small groups and these political parties. The mass of the people that lived out in the countryside, they didn't know any better. They didn't know anything. Here's what they were told. If you go with us, you're going to get the land. We're going to take the land from the landowner and we're going to give it to you. Did that happen? No. Go back a few years when the Tsar got rid of the whole slavery institution in Russia. People were allowed to buy property if they wanted to. People were allowed to rent it. They could work on the property they used to be a slave on. But in this revolution, they said, we're going to give you the land. Well, that sounds great. Let's get our pitchforks. Let's go kill the landowner. And then we're going to take the land and we're all going to give ourselves so many acres. That's not what happened. That land then went to the area Soviets, the groups of these college-educated nothings who had never done anything. And they determined what, and their basic point was nobody really needs land. What we need is food. So what we'll do is we'll organize these communal farms. Everybody will come do their work, and then everybody will split. Except that's not what happened either. Huge amounts of that food that you killed your master in order to get the land, but you didn't get the land, you just got put into a commune. Huge amounts of that food, the majority of it went to the cities. to feed the masses who were working in the factories, who were told they were going to become the owners of the factory, and they didn't. The Bolsheviks just began killing everybody. And then they said, we're in charge. Doesn't matter what you vote for, doesn't matter what you want. We're in charge, and this is the way it's going to be from now on. Their whole opinion was, why would we give people votes and give people ideas? We don't let them have guns. Why would we let them have ideas? That's a Stalin quote. So that's where we are. We're the same kind of people who are willing to buy a system that doesn't work and that isn't working and that's only going to get worse because we're not willing to pull out of it. And this can be done on a very small scale. From what I've been saying from the beginning, if people would start growing some of their own food, plant a garden, get a few animals, get some chickens, start working with your neighbors, do some barter and trade, pull out of a big portion of the economy, stop financing it, and start trading and bartering. But that's hard, and people don't want to do hard things. Hey, everybody, that's my little rant for today. If you guys have a question or comment, come on in. I just ran everybody off. I think I'm the only one left here. So if you're out there writing a question or a comment, I would love to hear what you have to think, what you have to say. And if not, it's going to be a short night. I got to get my mouse working. My mouse stopped working. It's been a weird technological issue going on here. All right. So I'm here for you. I'll be glad to hear what you have to say. I think my days of getting a bunch of people active and talking is probably over. We'll see. Maybe the comments aren't working. Am I here by myself? Ugh. A lot of my chapters in off grid. All right, if people would read that, that'd be great. I'm not asking for everybody to quit your job and move off grid and tell everybody to stuff it. Not yet. I'm just telling you that what is we're moving towards is inevitable because people won't do hard things. The hardship that comes out of it is also inevitable, and it will be harder on the people who would not do hard things. All right, I'm waiting on you guys. I don't really have much more to say. I've been talking about books. I had another book, but I don't know what I did with it. Oh, here it is. So this is another book. This is about this book is written by John Reed, and he died shortly after he wrote it. And then this is a book about John Reed. So Romantic Revolutionary, a biography by Robert A. Rosenstone. You can also see the movie Reds. The movie Reds, I think, came out in 1981 with Warren Beatty. That's kind of a fictionalized version of John Reed's life. What they don't ever, like when you're watching the movie or reading the book, you don't get to see the end. You don't get to see the 100 million dead. You don't get to see 30 million dead Ukrainians at the Holodomor. Do you think that the only people who would survive a devastating situation like the Soviet Union would be the people who are unplugged? I'm not sure if it would be the only people, but they certainly have a step up. There are some fundamental differences between America in 2020 and the Soviet Union. Although we are basically a minimally educated people, we are not at all acquainted with hard work, physical labor, or any of that kind of stuff. And then the second issue is that Americans have become very, very good at bending. Let's put it that way. Sometimes people that bend, and I'm not saying it's a good thing, especially in Christianity or anything else. Sometimes people that bend survive. Not many of them will, but some of them might. So I can't say everyone. Ethan says he's playing a video game. Well, they should make a video game of me. But I'd love to see if you guys have any questions or comments or anything you want to talk about. It's interesting how poorly socialists and Marxists are at representing anybody other than their own bellies. And let me tell you something. It's interesting. Here's one of the tricks you're going to find. So-and-so is not a Marxist. They're not a communist. They're a democratic socialist. That's a new game. It's not new. It's been around since the 1920s. That's a game they like to play. They're not Marxists, because they know that 99.997% of the people don't even know anything about Marxism other than redistribution of wealth. They know about, maybe a little bit about Soviet Union or whatever their parents told them, but they've never read a book on it. They don't have any clue what it is. But people just have a tendency that's a leftover from the 1940s and 50s of thinking that Marxism and communism is bad. So rather than educate anybody, what they do is they say, oh, we're not Marxists. We're democratic socialists. Well, what is a democratic socialist? This was going around on my Facebook the other day. Some of my friends were passing this around and cheering it. Well, a democratic socialist is somebody that votes for other people's stuff. You vote for it. As long as you voted for it, then it's fine. You get that? My point is that socialism and communism are founded on these two principles: theft and covetousness. That doesn't change in democratic socialism. Democratic socialism says if you can get controls of the mouthpieces of the media, if you can control the media and you control the message, you can get 51% of the people to vote for anything, as we've seen recently. And if 51% of the people say that you shouldn't make more than $50,000 a year, or you shouldn't make more than $100,000 a year, or a certain percentage of whatever you make should go to this guy or that guy, then they vote themselves your property. That's democratic socialism. Don't let them fool you and act like, well, it's because they want to get into the esoteric details of Marxian philosophy and economics. How come we allow that? These people murdered more people in the last century than anybody even close. They literally murdered more people in one century than the Roman Catholic Church has since the beginning. 100 million people all over the world. And we rightfully say, hey, we're not going to allow your fascist symbols and your fascist this and that. And then they go, oh, but let me help you out and understand this. This isn't Marxism. This is democratic socialism. We're going to vote for his stuff. I tried to explain this to my daughter, my youngest daughter. Because if you don't know any better, it sounds kind of good. If you don't know that stealing and coveting is really, really bad, it's like in the top 10 of bad, then they come to you and they go, no, we're going to vote for healthcare. We're going to vote for this or that. Oh, we're going to vote for it. Well, then that's fine. Well, what happens if I don't want to vote for it and I don't want to do it and I don't want to participate? Well, you should. Now, here's what happens. It doesn't matter. And I would tell her, they will come over with guns and they will get the stuff. No way. No way. I said, listen, if I go over to my neighbor's house and I pull out a gun and I say, I want $50, and I take his $50 and I go buy something for myself, they'll put me in the jail. But if I get my friends to vote for a guy who will send somebody over there with a gun to take the $50 and give it to me, that's democratic socialism. They go, well, there's no guns. It's just voting. It's just taxes. No, it's not. If you choose not to give it up and it's yours and they take it anyway, that's stealing. That's stealing. And there's a point of a gun. There's always the point of a gun. Always. Just choose not to pay a bunch of them for a while and see how long it takes till the guns come out. That's more than the Spanish flu. That's right. People are so enticed by free stuff, and it's taken a lot of demoralization to get there. You're exactly right. The idea, though, now based on, because we live in this very highly technicist society, is that somehow we can just continue to produce enough for everybody to have everything they want. That's not the point, first of all, but it's also not true. Eventually, the people who are producing stop. And that could be you, or it could be me. When I realize it does me no good to work harder, it does me no good to come up with a new idea, it does me no good to come up with a new concept or to do things a different way, because any increase is no longer going to be mine or my family's, then I'm not going to do it, because it creates more problems. The idea that all of a sudden everybody's going to go work extra to feed everybody else, the only time that has ever happened in the history of the world is with capitalism. Ever. All right, hold on. My battery's going dead. I got to do something real quick. Hold on just a second. It's always one thing or another. All right, we're at 46 minutes. I don't have many minutes left. All right. Hello, Bucksport, Maine. I think what is most challenging for modern Americans is to do the social networking part of your recommendations and getting out of the me mentality and getting into the we focus. Yes. Yes. Hey, everybody, I want to remind you, make sure you go over to the YouTubes after this is over. Give it about 10 minutes and hit refresh, then go hit the like button. We got a bunch of subscribes over the last couple of days. We actually went over 1,900. Got to 1,905. We're trying to get to 2,000, but I probably going to lose a couple after this show. We'll see. I always say that. Sometimes it doesn't happen. So usually it does. All right, everybody. God bless you. I hope you are all doing well out there. I appreciate you guys. Maybe we'll have a more uplifting show. Hey, I want to talk a little bit about the show, because what I'm trying to move towards is more of a maybe a bi-weekly podcast. And it's going to come down to the reason we're doing it the way we're doing it now with the live shows is because of the power issues, as you can tell. I haven't got a solution yet. What I was throwing around today was maybe a Monday, and we need to make the shows regular so that people know when I'm going to be on and at what time. I can only do 7 p.m. shows when it's not Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, because those are the days that Danielle works, and I go to pick her up. So I'm thinking about a Monday and a Friday show, moving it maybe an hour earlier during the winter, 6 o'clock, maybe 7 Central Time. And then if I want to do a live show some other time of the week, it could just be a wild hair. I can do it if I want. But having 2 regular shows that people are, and then once we have the power source that we're hoping to get pretty soon, then I actually want to start bringing on some guests and having some topical shows, stuff you can share, stuff we can type on there. This is what this show is about. So I appreciate all of you out there who've been sharing the show, who've been trying to get people to subscribe. We need to get over 2,000. That's my goal by the end of the year. I got to get past the COVIDs, hopefully this week. But Lord willing, I might be back tomorrow or the next day. I'll let you know. I love you all. As always, God bless you all. And I'll see you when I see you.